It is with quick and hurried hand that I record these words, scribbled upon the last few crumpled pages of my notebook in this dark and empty barn at the edge of Grenshaw Farm. The night is still for now, but I don't know how long this will last. I expect that at any minute now to hear an awful sound. I expect at any minute now to hear the awful sounds of the creeping horror that so vengefully haunts me in the night. My sanctuary in the barn will surely not last, and time is running out. I was called to the Grenshaw farm one warm night last week. Mr. Grenshaw was having trouble with of late with predators in his field, hunting his livestock. Cows would disappear without trace and with no sign of struggle, save for the sounds they made at night when the attacks would occur. And no matter Father Grenshaw's methods of attempted observance and capture of these night predators, his cows would vanish suddenly with a terrifying wail from right under his nose. He was under the impression that he was simply plagued by a pack of unusually cunning wolves, when last week all of his cows returned to him at once. They did not return on their own, of course. They were by no means capable of doing that at all, dead as they were. No. Each cow was stacked meticulously in a pile in the center of the field, void of all bone structure and drained wholly of blood. Mr. Grenshaw took this as a cue to call for my services and my expertise in the wildlife sciences, so that I may identify what sort of beast could be capable of such a dreadful act. I arrived the next day at noon. But when Farmer Grenshaw escorted me to the pile of cows, I could scarcely believe my eyes. Never had I seen anything like this before, and no animal I knew could be capable of such unnatural methods of predation. The shock was evident on my face as Grenshaw began to explain the circumstances surrounding the bovine tower. Nothing made sense in any part of his story, and as I began to question the veracity of his tale, he offered to show me his latest finding. While making rounds about the field, Grenshaw had came upon a mound of freshly dug earth, indicative of some covered hole made by neither himself nor his workers. Roughly 10 feet in diameter, the mound itself was fairly small in height. A shallow hole, no doubt, but one made in a perfect circle by some means far beyond that of any ordinary wolf. Too perfect for an average farming tool either. I made it my resolve then to stay the night and try my best to observe the strange phenomenon at Grenshaw Farm, and to perhaps capture it on film. Upon nightfall, I set up my equipment. The whole night I sat watching the field, waiting for signs of the bizarre creature plaguing the Grenshaw Farm. Nothing appeared, no disturbance in the pasture. 2 more nights I waited with no result. My heart grew heavy, and I began to consider that Grenshaw was playing me for the fool. But the silly prospect of a man needlessly slaughtering his own livestock for a cheap laugh was outlandish enough to keep me on. Then I found it. It was late in the 4th night of my operation when I gained my first contact with the beast. I had ran into the outhouse to relieve myself. Gone for mere minutes, I returned to find my tripod vanished, and my camera on the ground with a lens cap neatly in place. I sprang at once into the farmhouse, holding tight to my camera. My pace quickened as a rustle spread throughout the air. A shrill clicking noise arose and followed until I reached the door, silencing only after I flung myself through the room and slammed it shut behind me. Breathlessly, I called out to the homeowner. Farmer Grenshaw appeared at his bedroom door, quite irate with my banging about and demanding to know what had happened. Scarce had the words left his lips when a thumping was heard on the roof. For a moment, there was silence. But then an unforgettable noise came from above. Something was at once scurrying and dragging across the roof, slowly yet hurriedly shifting its way over our heads as if to find weakness in the roof. Finding none, the noises ceased, replaced instead by a piercing, anguished shriek. Upon its end, we sat in stunned silence. For a long moment. The both of us too shocked to speak, attempting and failing to understand the phenomenon that had just befallen us. Finally, Grenshall spoke. Gazing at the video camera still clenched tightly in my fist, he recommended me view footage I had shot. I agreed. Having left my tripod behind me in rush for shelter, I had to fight to keep the camera still in my unsteady hand while the two of us watched what with my camera had already seen. What we witnessed was more than I could imagine, and it was only with great effort that I can record it here. For several minutes after my departure from the outhouse, indeed far longer than it had seemed I had actually been gone, though I may now attribute that to the suspense felt during the viewing, the camera revealed nothing strange, nothing out of the ordinary. Several cows wandered in and out of shot, but presently I noticed a slight rustling in the grass. I held my breath, unprepared for what I would see next. One cow, having the misfortune to be standing so near the disturbance, became intensely distressed and began to run the other way, leaving in its wake a path of rustling grass matching its movements exactly. Within seconds, the grass had caught up to the fleeing boulevard, and the long, dark shape that shall forever pervade my nightmares rose up and snatched the cow. An unnatural shrieking shook the air. No doubt a desperate yet fruitless struggle for survival. Then it stopped, all at once. That fiendish clicking now burned into my psyche, accompanied the arrival of the most terrifying beast directly in front of my very camera. At least, I gazed upon the dreadful countenance of the beast that had been terrorizing the farm, the subjects of so many nights' surveillance, the sole reason for my purpose there. It was an insectoid. It was insectoid in appearance, as a great centipede, though tens, if not hundreds of times larger than any I had ever seen before, than any I've seen on Earth. Its orange carapace glistened in the moonlight, and those eyes, God, those eyes, were as compounded as any eye could be, blood-red and seething, positively seething. Yet a strange intelligence could be seen deep within, though I dared not to look too deeply. Many sets of mouthparts, each set concealing one more sinister than the last, showed through its razor-sharp maw, clicking hungrily through, while a pair of feelers reminiscent of the Fu Manchu mustache, one may recall from action movies, moved over the apparatus before them, periodically blocking the camera's view of the great worm. Soon the clicking slowed, and the lidless eyes indescribably narrowed somehow. Now the great maw opened, dripping with juices and tinged with red with the blood of its latest victims, and before I knew what to expect, swallowed up my camera with a piercing shriek. Darkness filled the screen. Silence once more. I stood shocked. The tape could not lie. The beast had swallowed the camera. How could that be, when not a minute later, according to the timestamp on the tape, I had returned to find my equipment in one piece, and so very obviously not in the belly of the beast, with its lens cap neatly in place. I knew then and there I had little time. My only priority at the moment was to leave, to get out of the house and as far away from the farm as I possibly could. Be away from the madness that had presented itself here. Nothing in all my years as a field biologist could have prepared me for such a sight. Such are the sights I have seen this night. Sights that shook me to the very core. But how could I leave when the creeping horror was no doubt out there at this very moment, stalking Grenshall and me like common prey? I was trapped. Grenshall, his family, all of us were trapped in this shack in the middle of nowhere, cornered like animals while the eldritch thing outside lurked in the darkness, waiting. Or perhaps not waiting. I say not waiting, not because I thought it had left, but because the front door suddenly came under siege. how such a flimsy slab of wood could withstand the massive assault in only another question I shall never have answered. But withstand it did, oh yes, for a time, long enough for me to evacuate the house. Grenshall ran back to rouse his family for escape, but I was no fool. I knew that it would take too much time we did not have. The door from which I had made my initial entrance some minutes prior, now retracing my fearful steps back towards the fields in an attempt to hide myself in the forest, behind the pasture, until such a time that I could make my way safely to my car and escape this dreadful place once and for all. I chanced to look back and regretted it immediately. That nameless horror had wrapped itself fully around the farmhouse, one section of carapace just above the door from which I had just made my escape, and now which dropped itself over the doorway as if to bar any further exit. The millions of legs undulated across the wooden walls as if the house itself were living. The entire length began to move, and I realized that the door had broken. The portal into the farmhouse had opened, and the beast had traveled through. I hastened to move faster when I tripped. I stumbled straight into one of those things, burrow pits. Shallow, yet deep enough to catch my foot and halt my progress. Pain shot through my ankle as it twisted in place. I swore violently and hit the dirt. Taking a moment to catch my breath, I attempted to assess the situation. The creature was still in the house, which was now largely quiet. I had two options. Make for the trees, where I could wait till dawn to break as I had originally intended, with no place to hide and no real cover. Or I could make straight for my car and risk the distance for guaranteed safety. I chose the latter, of course. The going was difficult, but I struggled to limp as fast as I could on my twisted ankle to my vehicle. The farmhouse was still quiet for now, but I knew at any moment the horror within could be let loose and take me down in an instant. I knew not what fate Grenshall and his family had met, but I could not concern myself with them now. If they could not escape themselves from this eldritch worm, surely I could not either. Rounding the side of the farmhouse, all thoughts of escape vanished. The car was still there, yet not a single tire appeared to be in working order, slashed to ribbons by what could only have been this dreadful thing in the farmhouse. It was more intelligent than I had thought. I froze in terror. What could I do? How could I possibly escape now? I heard the infernal clicking noise again, rising on the wind, but not from the farmhouse, oh no, but from somewhere further in the field. Clearly the beast had tunneled out of the house and into the field without me seeing it. I saw no movement, and the clicking did not appear to come any closer. I wasted no time. I ran as quickly as my ankle would allow into the stand of trees just beyond the driveway. Thinking back now, I believe that the creature was simply giving me a head start on the hunt. I quickly became lost in the woods. Every tree appeared the same, rising into darkness, blotting out the moonlight. Everywhere I turned, the damnable clicking followed me. Even when it subsided for a short time, I could still hear it in my mind, gnawing at my very soul. The rustling in the trees, the leaping shadows among the highest limbs, the creeping darkness among the brush, everywhere I turned, the beast was there first. Still, it made no move to capture, preferring instead to torment me with its games, herding me this way and that to some unknown goal. Eventually, I broke the trees, finding myself in a clearing. As long as I had been fleeing, I was still on the Grenshall farmland. The great, dilapidated barn rising in front of me, only a short distance away. It was my only hope. Perhaps I could find some sort of weapon, I thought. A pitchfork, a hoe, anything. But it was all for naught. I gained access to the barn, barring the door shut behind me, only to find the place completely empty. There was no livestock, no tools of any sort. Hay littered the floor, but that was the only sign of habitation in the entire place. All around me, seemingly on every inch of wall, I heard the creeping crawl in every direction, scraping the wood with its teeth every so often. Resigned to my fate, I took up a position in the corner of the barn where I could see it all. That way, that I may meet my end without surprise. It has been 2 hours now without a sign of the creature. It ended its exploration of the house and has left me alone since, though I do not believe this peace will last much longer. And what a peace it is! As unsteady as any wartime pact, full of fear and anger at the other side of the conflict. A conflict I had never a hope of winning from the start. If I could just last until dawn. But no! For now I know my time has come. I hear it once more. A different, a vibration in the ground. God! There it is at the center of the floor! It rises from the earth!